Hi all! Welcome to the Success Club. And now chapter 18, Meeting and Forestalling Objections. This video is sponsored by mynewskin.nl. Check out the website. Awesome products for your health and beauty. Opposition is the physical culture of determination. You must have the courage of your convictions. And if you have theories, you should be able to put them into a practical test. Don't canvas too much with your legs, use your brains. There are two kinds of objections which are met by all salesmen: valid and invalid. Naturally, it is impossible to overcome valid objections. It would be a mistake on the part of the salesman to try to overcome them. The important thing is for him to recognize that they are valid and to abide by the decision of the prospective customer. Very frequently, however, what appear on the surface to be valid objections are merely excuses. Never accept an excuse as a real objection. Do not come out bluntly and tell the customer that he is merely making an excuse or that he is hedging, but rather switch the selling talk onto a little different track, so that he will see there is no real good reason for the stand he is taking. It is not so easy to meet such objections as the goods are not suitable for our needs. The price is exorbitant, or we cannot afford to buy now. But in some cases, objections of this sort may not be really valid. Often they are merely excuses to put off buying. Here is where the salesman must show his power of reasoning and persuasion. He should make clear to the customers that, at first thought, these may seem to be valid objections, but that in reality, if he will only think of such and such points and reasons, he will see, after all, he should buy. No doubt there is far more trouble constantly arising. There is far more trouble constantly arising on this score than there should. Because the salesman cannot gently guide the mind of the customer to where all objections are forgotten. It is human nature to object, find fault and pick flaws, and the salesman must be prepared both for the real or valid and for the unreal or invalid objections. Above all, he must be prepared beforehand to answer, and to answer clearly and logically, the many very common objections which are brought up in connection with his line of goods. The older, more experienced salesmen and the sales managers usually have thought out the most effective answers to the objections that are ordinarily made. The young, inexperienced salesman must go to them for advice. He must be posted, if possible at the start, on the right answers to, let us say, the 10 most ordinary objections that are heard in his line of business. One of the most successful life insurance managers in the United States has given to his man a standard answer to this very common objection met by salesmen when trying to sell life insurance. I would like to take the matter up with my wife. The salesman is taught to use the law of non-resistance and to say, "That's a very good idea, Mr. Blank. This is such an important matter, you certainly ought to have your wife's opinion about it. But allow me to suggest that before you take the matter up with her, it would be best to have our doctor examine you to make sure that you can pass the physical examination. Because if you told your wife that you were going to take a life insurance and you then failed to pass the examination, she would be very much worried about you as long as she lives. The prospect will almost invariably say, 'Yes, you're right about that. I think I ought to take that precaution.' It is needless to say that 9 times out of 10 after the doctor has made the examination, it is quite easy to close the sale, whereas it would have been impossible or very difficult had the matter first been taken up at home and a lot of objections brought up in the absence of the salesman. Some say that you should never risk antagonizing a customer by departing from the law of non-resistance. Ordinarily, this is sound logic, but just as there are exceptions to every rule, so there are certain types of man with whom at least seeming opposition or an attitude of take it or leave it will be most effective. There are men and moods and times when only a good knowledge of human nature and a thorough sizing up of a customer will enable the salesman to get what he goes after. Also, there are occasions when the most expert salesman will meet at least temporary defeat. By the time you have exchanged a few sentences with your prospect, you can size him up fairly well and get a pretty good idea of what you are up against and how difficult the task is before you in order to interest him, to change his thought, to neutralize his natural prejudice against everyone who has anything to sell and against you in particular. There is a natural barrier at first between two people who meet under such conditions, and it depends largely upon you as a man, upon your talk, your ability to open up your nature, to show the best side of yourself, the attractive, the popular, magnanimous side, whether you gradually change the prospect's opposition to indifference, his indifference to interest, and his interest to desire to possess what you have to sell. You should never argue with a customer in the sense of quarreling or disputing with him, but there are times when you must reason with him to show him he is wrong. Do not, however, make a customer feel cheap or humiliated or anger him by opposition, especially in matters outside of your business. I have in mind a salesman who had practically closed a big order with a prospect when some allusion was made to the political situation. The salesman reflected upon the administration and the prospect jumped on him with both feet and became so angered that he positively refused to give him the order. Now, this salesman was not there to discuss politics or to convince his prospect that he was on the wrong side of any public question. He was there to sell his goods and not to talk politics. No matter what happens, never lose your head and never under any circumstances show resentment or disappointment or allow yourself to be drawn into an argument. There is always a temptation to have the last word, and it is the utmost importance that you should leave a pleasing picture of your call. Otherwise, when you return, the association of a disagreeable experience may bar you out. Some sales managers do not believe in paying any attention to objections. They say it is best to make the salesman so familiar with his goods and so enthusiastic about them that he will forestall all objections or overcome them by ignoring them, in the sense that he will not try to answer objections if they are made, and he will not talk or act as if he expected any to be made. There is a certain amount of sound philosophy in this attitude, but it is my opinion that a salesman will have more confidence in himself and will be better equipped for many emergencies if he has been thoroughly coached in the most commonly met objections, by having good sound answers right at the tip of his tongue. Never meet objections by cutting prices. It is the easiest thing in the world to prejudice a prospect's mind by offering to cut prices. He will think you are doing it to get his first order and that you will make it up the next time. He is watching you with all his eyes. His perceptive faculties are on the alert, ready to catch any unguarded word, the slightest contradiction, measuring up the improbabilities in your argument. Improbabilities in your argument. In other words, he is trying to find holes in your proposition. It is human nature to brace up against a new salesman and to try to down him with objections. Don't destroy confidence at the start by price cutting. Remember, objections are generally mere excuses. More than half the time they are not sound reasons for not buying. Therefore, do not take objections too much to heart. Know how to answer them satisfactorily, but be careful not to magnify their importance. Thank you for watching chapter 18. I will continue with chapter 19, the quality as a salesman. That is for the next video. Check out our sponsor, the mynewskin.nl. The link should be here. Thank you for watching. See you next video.